After hundreds of chapters of waiting, the Elbaf arc has finally arrived in One Piece as we delve further and further into the final saga of the story. Considering the amount of build-up for this arc, it was to nobody's surprise that it came after Egghead Island in the final saga. We've known since back in Little Garden that this would have to be an arc in the series, so when the Straw Hats finally arrived, it really wasn't a shocker. But on the checklist of islands we knew the Straw Hats would have to go on their journey to find the One Piece, Elbaf is really the last one we were waiting for. So that begs the question, what is after Elbaf? Today we're going to be analyzing the structure of the story to figure out what the Straw Hats' next stop is after Elbaf. Leave a comment if you agree with everything I say in this video, or leave a comment if you disagree and tell me where I went astray. And while you're down there, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this, exploring the wonderful world of One Piece as we delve into the final saga of the story. So, like I said previously, the last island we've been waiting for the Straw Hats to get to is Elbaf. In the entire story, it's the most foreshadowed island out of any destination the Straw Hats could have gone, besides Laugh Hill where the One Piece is. Which means that after this arc ends, whether it be in 30 chapters or 100 chapters, we really have no idea what's coming next. That is until you realize there's actually a very specific structure to Oda's arc writing where pre-timeskip and post-timeskip completely mirror each other. Now, if you've seen this comparison before, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, you're probably very confused at what I mean by that, so let me explain. When you line up the pre-timeskip arcs with the post-timeskip arcs, you'll find that each arc in pre-timeskip and post-timeskip has a counterpart corresponding to one another with many parallels. For example, let's start with the end of the East Blue Saga in Arlong Park and line it up with Fishman Island. Two very early arcs in their respective pre-timeskip and post-timeskip positions, both containing heavy lore about the Fishmen and the Sun Pirates, both about liberating a people who have been taken over by a corrupt Fishman, and both are the entrance arc into the further storylines developing in pre-timeskip and post-timeskip. Next is Alabasta and Dressrosa. Both arcs are about a warlord pirate who has manipulated a country and become their king. Both arcs center around a princess from that land siding with the Straw Hats to try and retake the throne that is rightfully theirs or their father's. And both see the inclusion of what I would call an honorary Straw Hat with Vivi and Law. Next you have Skypiea and Zoe. Both arcs take place in a secret faraway land with a race of people otherwise known as very secretive. Both locations contain very important poneglyphs towards the lore of the One Piece and the One Piece world, and both contain a very important flashback that would lead to very big events later on in the story, with Nolan and Kalgara's flashback having very important implications on the One Piece, and Zoe introducing us to the concept of Odin for Odin's later backstory in Wano, which I consider the most important flashback in One Piece so far. Next, you have Enies Lobby and Whole Cake Island, probably the most obvious connection, where each arc sees a crewmate leave the crew for their perceived benefit of the rest of the crew trying to sacrifice themselves to save their loved ones. Nico Robin believes that if she stays with the Straw Hats, the Navy will eventually kill them all because of her past. Sanji believes that if he stays with the Straw Hats, Big Mom will kill them because of his past. And obviously, in both arcs, Luffy gets to the core of both of these characters and makes them admit that they want to live, they want to go back to the Sunny, and they want to be family with the Straw Hats. We also see massive explosions of strength for Luffy in both of these arcs in his fights with Lucci and Katakuri. Next up, we have Wano and Thriller Bark, probably the hardest to connect amongst these connections, but there is still some threads. Both take place in a land, or in Thriller Bark's case, a ship that is not governed by the world government, it is not overseen by the Navy, and the outside world has very little influence on what happens on the island. Both see Luffy fighting an oars-like creature with oars in Thriller Bark and Kaido, the Oni, in Wano, and there's also the connection of Onigashima's skull being Oars' ancestor. And probably the biggest connection between these two arcs is the Ryuma connection, where Ryuma was introduced to us in Thriller Bark with his zombie, and Ryuma is obviously the legendary samurai from Wano. And lastly, in my opinion, the easiest to parallel is Sabaody Archipelago and Egghead Island. Looking at just the characters from these arcs is enough to make the connection. You have Kizaru, you have Sentomaru, and you have Kuma, all who play a big part in both arcs. But you also have the Celestial Dragon connection, where Sabaody Archipelago was all about ignoring the Celestial Dragons because if you fight them, you will call upon a Navy Admiral, where in Egghead, we are fighting against one of the strongest Celestial Dragons in a Gorosei member, or all 5 of them by the end of the arc. And in Sabaody, we get a lot of information about the One Piece from Rayleigh, whereas in Egghead, we get even more information about the One Piece from Vegapunk. Now that all these connections are set in stone for you, what does this mean for Elbaf? Well, if you just continue our pattern that we've been going on, this would mean that Elbaf mirrors Amazon Lily. Now this sort of makes sense. You can kind of draw the connection that both are far off lands, not under the jurisdiction of the world government, containing a race or a tribe of people that is a little secretive and is considered very strong in the Amazonians and the Giants. Both are overseen by the presence of a big political figure in One Piece, Amazon Lily being the pirate empress Boa, and Elbaf being the Yonko Shanks. And of course the connection between both Boa and Shanks is that they both adore Luffy. If we follow this train of thought, it means that the next arc after Elbaf should mirror Impelled Down. This would mean that someone probably has to be captured and spur the Straw Hats into action by the end of Elbaf. I think this is possible because you have characters who are at large right now that are related to the Straw Hats, like Vivi and Sabo, who could potentially be captured by the world government and spur on an Impelled Down scenario, except this time with the entire Straw Hat crew, and maybe at Marijois instead of Impelled Down. This would probably lead us quite easily into the final war because more shenanigans from the Straw Hats entering a government facility probably leads to an all-out war considering Luffy's status as a Yonko now. They cannot just treat him like some scrub entering their facility. He's literally one of the most powerful pirates in the world. But before we consider that possibility, let's backtrack a little bit because I actually think there's a different possibility for what the next arc will mirror in our little arc structure. The thing about the Straw Hats' journey is that they were separated at Sabaody, and their course through the New World was cut short immediately by Kuma. This is how Luffy ends up at Amazon Lily, and that's why it is the next arc in this story. However, if you remember back to Sabaody, if this did not happen, the Straw Hats set a straight course for Fishman Island. Now, I know this is a stretch, but what if we assume the next arc after Elbaf does not mirror Amazon Lily, it mirrors where the Straw Hats were supposed to go, Fishman Island? You're probably thinking right now, Fishman Island already has a mirror with Arlong Park, and that's totally correct. However, we also forget we are no longer in the post-timeskip section of the series. We have transcended into a third section of the series, which is the final saga. So I think it's okay to repeat a connection, even though Fishman Island already has a connection with Arlong Park. So what would the connection with Fishman Island be again, if it's not about a fishman taking over the land like it was in Fishman Island and Arlong Park? Well, there's actually a very big connection with Fishman Island and what is recently occurring in the One Piece world with the huge bombshell that the water levels are rising. As Imu continuously uses the Mother Flame, the water levels of the One Piece world continue to rise and rise and rise, displacing many citizens throughout the world and creating a literal rapture for the world. And in Fishman Island, there is countless lore about this event happening, with the creation of the Noah, the boat that's supposed to save civilization when this event was prophesied to happen. Also, the birth of Shirahoshi was quite literally meant to prevent this from destroying the world, because she has the power to command the Sea Kings to pull the Noah to save all the people who are going to be displaced from the use of the Mother Flame. Now you may be lost in this connection, but what I'm getting at here is that the Straw Hats aren't going to arrive at another island, at least not until they find the One Piece. But first, what's going to happen is Imu is going to lose it. We're going to see repetitive use of the Mother Flame, and the water levels of the ocean are going to rise like crazy. The reason the Straw Hats don't have time to just go leisurely to the next island like we're prophesizing here is because the world will be thrown into chaos, and the final war, the struggle for Highland, and the struggle against the Celestial Dragons is going to begin by the time Elbaf ends. And the connection with Fishman Island is not only the lore about this event happening, but the need to re-enter Shirahoshi into the story so she can bring the Noah to the surface to save all the people who are going to die at Imu's hand. Which means yes, if you want to break it down, the next arc in the story will be the gigantic final war we've all been waiting for, where the water levels continue to rise, the world falls into chaos, and every character we've been seeing throughout the entire 1,130 chapters of the story converge into one breaking point. I also think that this war will be so incredibly long, and perhaps divvied up into different sections, that certain parts of the war will mirror other pre-timeskip arcs like Marineford. Perhaps Marineford no longer parallels the entire final war, but the climax of the final war that's going to start after Elbaf. And of course, that would leave the Ace Sabo Luffy flashback that happens at the end of pre-timeskip, where Luffy declares his dream to the world that we still don't know what it is, to parallel after the final war, where the Straw Hats finally get to go claim the One Piece and Luffy gets to achieve his final dream. The parallels all connect. I know this is a little bit of a crazy theory, but I was just looking at the arcs labeled side to side, and I found myself wondering, there's something wrong here. We gotta take a look at this and maybe make a little theory about it. Again, if you think what I'm saying is absolutely insane and you have a different idea, let me know in the comments. While you're down there, make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what other theories you want to hear for the final saga of One Piece, because there is so many incredible ideas we could be talking about during these break weeks, and I just love making these videos. So let me know. Until next time.